Okay, so I'm going to introduce our next speaker. We have Sarah Poliquin, who is a PhD. She is our scientific officer. She is amazing. She is a postdoctoral fellow at COMBINEDBrain, a consortium of patient advocacy groups for rare genetic neurodevelopmental disorders. Melissa mentioned COMBINEDBrain earlier. She is also the NRTF1 Foundation Scientific Officer, of course, and Sarah received her PhD in neuroscience from Vanderbilt University. And we hired Sarah through the COMBINEDBrain. It's called the COMBINEDBrain Rent a Neuroscientist program a little over a year ago. And she's our one paid employee of the foundation, and she is the best investment we could have made, honestly. And again, thanks to all the fundraising and support from you all out there. And thanks to Sarah, we have made huge strides in where we stand with research and where we're going with research. So let's give it over to Sarah.
Thank you for your kind words, Carly. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Poliquin. I'm going to be giving two presentations today. One of them is on behalf of Dr. Terry Jo Bichelle, who is the founder and CEO of COMBINEDBrain. She is not able to be here today because she is actually at a meeting between the National Academy of Science and the FDA and the European Medical Agency. Just, not super important things. So I'm going to first give her presentation, just talking a little bit about what COMBINEDBrain is and how you as the families can help out with the research for BBS-OAS and for all neurodevelopmental disorders. And then my second presentation after a break will be more focused on what it is that we know about BBS-OAS and NR2F1 and what is it that we need to discover in order to keep pushing towards treatments. All right, so this is on behalf of Terry Jo talking about natural history studies. What are they and why are they important for research and for finding treatments for your kids? So COMBINEDBrain is an umbrella organization of multiple patient, thank you so much, Tim. Multiple patient advocacy groups for genetic neurodevelopmental disorders, just like BBS-OAS. It started from a group of 20 back at the end of 2019, and now we are up to just about 100 different disorders. So COMBINEDBrain has just exploded, and it's been amazing having so many people participate. And the more we have, more members we have, the more we can network and kind of leverage each other's expertise and talents and experience and connections to really just help the whole community. Yeah. And one of the main goals of COMBINEDBrain is to develop natural history studies and outcome measures and biomarkers for all of these rare diseases so that then pharmaceutical companies are able to use that information to develop treatments. So as has already kind of been touched on, BBS-OAS is very much a unique disorder, but there are commonalities with a lot of these other rare genetic neurodevelopmental disorders. There's the intellectual disability, autism, epilepsy. All of these things are in common across these disorders, as well as other unique features such as like hypotonia, the low muscle tone, or cortical visual impairment. We are finding more and more is widespread across many of these neurodevelopmental disorders. And so having this group together to look across all these disorders is powerful. And so here's just kind of a timeline of what it looks like from identifying a gene and the associated disorder all the way up through the approval of medications to treat it. So, sometimes clinical trials end up failing, and this is something that, Terry Jo has definitely seen. She's a mother of an adult son with Angelman syndrome, so she's been in this world for a long time. And one of the main things that causes these trials to fail is that the trials are centered on things that are easily studied in the lab and what you can see in mice. But we're not trying to treat mice, we're trying to treat you and your children with BBS-OAS. So the way to hopefully avoid some of those failures is to really keep you as the families and the patients at the center of everything that we do. And so that means identifying what matters to you as patients and to families, and this then determines what natural history to collect. And then once we know what sort of symptoms and phenotypes are common in the patients, then we can try to identify what is the best way to measure those things in animal models. And this also helps to guide the endpoint used in clinical trials, because we don't want to have, to be measuring something that doesn't actually affect the quality of life of patients and their families. We want it to be, if there was one particular symptom that if you had a magic wand, you would wave it and fix that symptom, then that's what we want to be focusing on for clinical trials. If there's something else where it's like, that's cool and all, but it doesn't really change your day-to-day life, then that's not as important for a treatment. So we need to determine, what it is that matters most to you and find the outcome measures that will accurately reflect the changes within that domain. And then hopefully having all of this together, touching in with you as the families at every step of the way, that hopefully then clinical trials will succeed. And so just the story of BBS-OAS really underscores how important it is to have that family and patient involvement, starting with just Peggy back in 2014, who, her family and Christian Schaff had noticed, there's just something different about her. She wasn't fitting in the categories of the diseases that were understood at the time. And so it was let's try to figure out what's going on here. And then that led over the next couple of years to identifying a few more patients and getting a better understanding of, first the gene that was involved with the symptoms, and as well as kind of the phenotypes associated. And that was the first publication and the naming of the disorder. And then from there, it has exploded to, there was a publication at the end of 2021 that was with 84 different patients. And this huge amount of data helps us to further understand how it is that BBS-OAS can manifest. Whether it's ranging from epilepsy or autism-like features or the muscle tone or facial dysmorphisms, having all of this information helps us to get a better snapshot and understanding of all of the individuals with BBS-OAS, because no two individuals are exactly the same. So just kind of zooming in on part of that from the publication, you can see that there's the various eye disorders, abnormality of eye movement, and nystagmus. Then there's the differences with the skeletal structure. Some more eye issues pop up again. But you can see that no one patient has exactly the same symptoms as the others, that everyone is unique. And so we need to get all of these patients together to have this bigger understanding and make sure that we aren't missing out on some of the important symptoms. So some of the common features, which I'm sure you are all aware of, including speech delay, vision impairments, autism, seizures, etc. And the FDA also recognizes the importance of having the patient voices and the family voices centered in the process of drug development. And so this includes disease concept mapping. And so what this is talking with you as the families to understand what it is that you see in your children, how it is that their disease is affecting their life, and the broader impact of the symptoms. If it's due to the issues with verbal communication, does your child have a hard time making friends? That's something that's very important, and it's hard to read about that in the literature, but by interviewing the families, we really pick up on the things that matter to you and can create this disease concept. So it's every single symptom and problem that any of you have ever had. And then from there, we can then figure out which outcome measures to use to model that. And so this is Showing here just kind of part of a draft conceptual model. So this is not the part from the interview. This is the preliminary stage of just a literature review. We're hoping to have the full interview process done beginning in 2025 and ending in 2026. And then when we have all of this information together, we can compare it across other disorders and perhaps find some surprising insights as to which disorders are most similar. And then we can partner with those other foundations and other families, whether it's to co-fund basic science research or whether it's a basket trial where it would be a clinical trial, a drug treatment that might apply across 3 or 4 different groups. And so you can see how it would it would be easier to market that to pharmaceutical companies. It's less rare when multiple groups are working together. And so to kind of define what it is that a natural history is and why it's important, so this is gathering data about a patient over time. So trying to get a full understanding of what their life is from when they were still in the womb all the way through adulthood and what problems present at various times. And so this can include information from clinicians as well as from the caregivers. So the difference between a patient registry and a natural history is that the registry is just at a single point in time. You might answer about what problems your child has today, but a natural history is longitudinal. You'll keep answering questions, maybe every year or so to get this better understanding of the patients, and it can help to give that more narrative story of what it's like to be a person with BBSOAS. For example, you might find out that seizures are really bad in the first couple of years, but that then seizures typically decline in frequency later on, or information like that comes from having the natural history and following individuals for years, so you can really get all of that information. And that's what you, as the parents, can help to give researchers. From having the natural history studies, it's talking about the symptoms that are present and the various treatments that you've tried. If there's a medication that just really is not working for seizure control in our kids, then the natural histories can help show that. And so then future families with children with BBSOAS can know to avoid that drug, and they don't need to waste time trying all these drugs that are not going to work. They'll be able to know from your experience and the information that you have given these researchers and doctors that, hey, these drugs over here are actually the ones that are best. So having your information there helps that. Also, the nuances of the disorder. For example, we know now that not every individual with BBSOAS has optic nerve atrophy, even though it's in the name. But it took, several dozen patients in order to identify that. And so what are we going to find out when we have 200 people? We might find more information that it was just not part of the initially recognized phenotype of the disorder. Natural history study can also help with identifying a timeline of the disorder so that families know what to expect as a child progresses from a baby to a toddler to elementary school, and then as an adolescent, what changes are they going to be seeing? And it can also help families and doctors to have a treatment plan early and prepare instead of just retrospectively trying to react to any differences. Natural histories are also very valuable because they can serve as controls for clinical trials. So you may have heard that clinical trials often have a placebo control. So you have one group who is getting the experimental medication, and you have another group who is not getting any treatment at all, because scientists need to be able to determine what is the difference between the new treatment versus just that anticipation and of having the treatment, the placebo. But that obviously really sucks for the families who get the placebo. And for neurodevelopmental disorders and severe issues like epilepsy, is that even really ethical? And so if possible, if there's a way for everyone to get the treatment from the beginning, then obviously that's what we would all like to do. And the natural history can serve as that control group. If we know for certain from having studied hundreds of patients that we always see a certain progression of phenotype, and then the people who are taking the medication don't have that, if they have a different trajectory, if, say they all start walking and talking way sooner than any other BBS-OAS patient has ever been reported before, then we know, even without having the placebo group, that this treatment is working. And this has actually happened for other disorders before. So SMA is a severe disorder of the spinal cord and can result in early mortality for patients with the most severe type. And so using the natural history, the researchers knew that individuals with a certain type of mutation never lived past a certain age. Their muscles involved with breathing would eventually fail, and these patients were dying. But then with the treatment, they didn't need a control group. They saw that these patients were living longer than any other patient with those types of mutations had ever been reported to. And so there was that clear, obvious improvement, and the medication was working. And this has passed through the FDA. And then there's another disorder as well. So this is another genetic neurodevelopmental disorder. And again, the natural history is robust enough. We know exactly what the pattern normally looks like for this disorder, that researchers are able to use just that control to look at the treatment. And then for Angelman syndrome, again, they are considering whether the natural history could be used as a control for treatments for Angelman syndrome. And then I'm sure many of you have been a little bit frustrated sometimes with repeating some of the same surveys over and over across multiple institutions. Like every time you go to the doctor, it's the same surveys you've seen before, as well as potentially any new treatment programs that you've enrolled your children in. But that's the power of identifying through the disease concept map what it is that matters most. And so we can focus in on certain sets of questionnaires and symptoms to be trying to understand, and to fill those out in matrix so that then it's available for all researchers. So the ClinGen surveys are a set of questionnaires used across all sorts of different conditions, not even just genetic neurodevelopmental disorders, but like really any rare disease. And it's a standardized set of questions that then enables researchers to compare across disorders, and these are well recognized and accepted surveys used internationally. And those are on Matrix for BBS-OAS families to use. And then some more things that we're looking at for COMBINEDBrain is really trying to identify what it is that is most commonly used. And so we can see that for epilepsy, it's often seizure diaries reported by the patients. There's the Vineland that looks at developmental skills. Behavioral problems in epilepsy are, again, things reported often by the patient or the caregivers. And so we're trying to look across all of the different disorders, what are some of these most common ways to measure the outcome measures for the families. And COMBINEDBrain's also looking at, one of the things we're doing is really looking across all these different clinical trials and identifying the recommended measures. And so this is from the existing things that are available now. And then also, as Melissa has touched on, COMBINEDBrain is trying to develop new measures that more accurately reflect the nuances for BBS-OAS and for these other neurodevelopmental disorders, because you're all unique. There are a lot of similarities, but also things that are unique, and we want to be able to capture all of those subtle changes and improvements in your children. Yeah, Melissa's already talked about the ORCA, and I know Christy's going to talk about it later. Yeah, so just some of the things that we are working on. And yeah, it's up to you as the parents to help out filling out all of those surveys on Matrix. And once you've done them, then they're there forever, and you can even share that information with other people. So this is tremendous. This helps so much, and pharmaceutical companies care about it, doctors care about it, researchers. It helps everyone. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Do we have any questions in the room for Sarah? Yes.
My question is regarding the genetic reports for some of our patients. My daughter has a DNA binding domain mutation, and back in 2019, when her report was done, they weren't like super informed at our genetics office. So I'm just wondering if it would be beneficial to have that resubmitted for any reason, or if there would be any like benefit to have the report rerun.
So the report, you generally only need to get your child's DNA sequenced once, and then the report, it should be good forever. But having that available to researchers who can stay up to date as things change and see, so I'm assuming then that you had a variant of uncertain significance, a VUS? No.
They were just a little bit, had vague terminology about the, I don't remember their like terminology for like it being the cause of the symptoms. So they did find the mutation, but they were like, we don't know if this is the thing.
Yeah, you could reach back out to your genetic counselor, and there has been a lot of information that has come out in those years since the initial sequencing. You don't need to get resequenced, but you could have someone relook at the genetic report because there has been more research since then on like the various types of mutations and understanding, which ones are most severe and associated with the worst phenotypes versus milder ones, or even benign variants that just normal people in the population have and that don't actually affect the function of the NR2F1 protein.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to sit down with you and kind of look at the report, and that's true for you and everybody else. If in case we don't have enough time during this conference, you can also email me the report, and we can exchange thoughts via email or have like a Zoom call, and I can help you explain, and we can figure out if there's any need to rerun the analysis, or if I can try to explain, what's inside the report, because obviously, the reports use a lot of kind of very special lingo, kind of, for geneticists, like even a lot of physicians who are not trained in genetics don't understand what's in there, let alone families who have not studied medicine and genetics extensively for years and decades. So I'll try to do my best to kind of explain it to you.
Thank you, Dr. Schaff. Do we have any other questions?
I have two for you, please. So the first one, so combined brain, if I understood well, you have also looking at other diseases, right?
Yep.
So my question is, out of curiosity, which are the most similar to the BBS-OAS that we know today, which might help us to increase the number of, cases?
That's difficult to answer just off the top of my head. It is part of a larger project that I am working on, is trying to identify which of the disorders are most similar in terms of phenotype as well as the underlying mechanisms, the associated genes. So I cannot answer that right now, but I'm hoping in a couple months to finish that project, and I'll give that to the board members, and then I can definitely disperse that onto you.
Great. And the second one was most about You also talked about the natural history. And my question was, which is the number, so which is the range of cases that are needed so that we have a natural history that is robust enough? Is that hundreds? Is that thousands of cases? Is that by age? Does it count in total? So how many diagnoses do you need? Sample size, yes, exactly.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where the more you have, the better.
Okay.
I think right now there are around 100 patients who have filled things out in Matrix, and that is a really rock solid start. Like, that is fantastic, and many other groups don't have anywhere near 100. But there's still more information that we're finding out. Every person who fills out the survey is contributing new information that we didn't have before, and so really, we need every single family to be filling things out. With a rare disease, you can't just hide in the shadows and wait for someone else to step up. Like, every single one of you is contributing valuable information, and we need all of you.
That's almost related to something I was going to ask. Do you have any idea what proportion of that might be what the total cases are? Like 100 in versus?
Yeah.
So, can you just repeat what he asked?
Yeah, so the question was how many of the total cases of BBS-OAS are reflected in that natural history so far. I believe there are somewhere around 200 to 300 patients who have been diagnosed and identified so far, and so that's actually something like 1/3 of all of the diagnosed patients have filled out these surveys so far, which is fantastic. Like, many other rare diseases are desperate to get even 10%, and you guys have more than 3 times that. But there are probably way more patients with BBS-OAS out there. They just haven't been diagnosed yet.
And for those parents in the room, if you take a look at your name badge, if you have got a pink and a green spot on your name badge, it's a big thank you, because it means you have got your patient registry account and you have uploaded your genetic report. If you don't have a green and a pink, yeah, you have got it. If you don't have a green and a pink, come and talk to us and we can show you how to do that. And Katja is going to tell you all about that after the break as well.
Okay, so we have no virtual questions. All right, we'll do a quick raffle, and then we will take a break. Let's give it up for Sarah one more time before we do our raffle.